Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today. You know, quick, just a little bit about me and how I got here. I am a Microsoft certified trainer. My company does a lot of Copilot adoption projects, and we're seeing a lot of interesting stuff going on right now. So a couple things that I wanted to make sure that we can share with you today is not just like, okay, what are the basics of using Copilot and making it more useful, but and by the way, it's not a sales pitch for me about Copilot. It's because I don't sell licenses. Barry doesn't sell licenses. It's more like just making sure that you have a sense of perhaps how you might be using it or you might be positioning it. It's not super technical. But what we're finding is that, if you haven't been using Copilot regularly and you had something that you tried and it was average at best, go back and try it again, because this product is changing all the dang time. And it's just, I would love to get a sense. So if you could, if you want to participate in chat, I'd love to have some interaction with you. It does make it just a little bit more engaging to know who's in the room. And by that, please just share a little bit about what is your favorite way to be using Copilot right now. And if you don't have a favorite or you're just getting started, share that as well. So in chat, if you would please go ahead and just put in, what is your favorite way to be using Copilot right now? We have a handful of people starting to respond, which I appreciate. Favorite way to be using Copilot right now. Now, keep in mind, in this room, we could have some newer adopters. We could have some people who aren't using it at all. They might be using a totally different product, which is completely acceptable. We might have some very advanced adopters. That's okay. David doesn't have a favorite yet. Hussein, I don't know what the hat theory is. Generating lab scenarios. Great. That's a wonderful use case for it. Thank you. Auto correction code and wiki recommendations. Okay, great. PowerShell scripts. Excellent. Yeah. I mean, there's so many options. In fact, my excitement, in case you weren't all, already excited about this session, is, oh, I like where you're going with that, Hussein. Put on different hats related to the, what role you want it to play. Think like a trainer, think like a code writer. I also have used it from a critical thinking standpoint of using like the 6 thinking hats. And I actually have that as one of my prompts is now that we've worked through this whole thing, help me bounce around on the 6 thinking hats from Edward de Bono. So, we can keep it technical, we can keep it in the leadership space, we can keep it all over the place and still have some fun with it. So welcome everyone. Let's dig in just a little bit and I'll share with you some ideas. I'm open to your feedback. I recognize that we're all in different roles. We're all, having different needs from this. Oh, I was going to share. The last thing I was just attending was the Global Excel Summit, which has been taking place in London yesterday and today, which meant I was up very, very early to do some things to learn more about Excel, which is one of my favorite programs. But I'm intentionally not a coder. And so anytime Python has come up in the past, I'm like, ooh, my clients are smaller. They probably don't need Python. Or I came up with 100 different reasons why they didn't need Python. But if you started using Copilot with Excel at all, you will know that it's giving you some outputs that relate to Python. So, okay, well, I teach Copilot in Excel, so perhaps I need to be more skilled on that. I am finding that things in the past that I thought were less applicable or less accessible are becoming more applicable and more accessible because we have Copilot as kind of that middleman translator. So again, when we're talking about PowerShell scripts or correcting code, things like that, just something to think about is, how do you get to that end result faster? And finally, 2 other things when I'm thinking about this. One, I like to think about AI in general as what I call accelerated impact, and that you can just get to a result faster. I can serve my customers faster. Additionally, I like to think about what we're going to be talking about today is a little bit of like an accordion or a compression of time, where we have our inputs and we have our desired outputs. And we used to have our process for how we would get from one to the next. But depending on how we're leveraging Copilot or other AI, it can compress that timeline. Now, sometimes it can also expand that timeline because you might have found 14 different things that you want to add to it because you are in this flux mode. But if anyone can relate to kind of that idea of accelerated impact or this idea of the accordion of a compression and expansion of time using AI, can you just give a quick reaction in our using the reactions here in Teams? Just, again, different ways to make sure that we can engage today. All right, let's jump on the ride. So here's what's happening today. I want to give you a little bit of a reality check, what Copilot can and can't do. And honestly, if you're listening to this a week from now, we are now almost towards the end of May of 2026. This whole conversation might be outdated in a week, a month, and certainly a quarter, because the product is changing so quickly. Even where the icon lives continues to, move around. So just hang tight and accept that this is going to be a lot of change coming at us. We're going to look at some different practical scenarios. I have a few live demonstrations that you'll be able to see in action today. We'll talk about some pitfalls. I'm going to talk about a prompt framework. Not necessarily because I want to give everybody prompt frameworks. If anybody feels like those prompt frameworks are coming out of your ears, please, again, give me a quick reaction, because it's a little bit exhausting in my experience right now. But I also want to share with you what my experience with sharing prompt frameworks has been when I'm doing that in training scenarios, so that you, depending on what your roles are, can help bring others along on this Copilot journey. And again, you're welcome to ask questions throughout. So we have Barry monitoring the Q&A. I have the chat in front of me. You'll kind of see for demonstrations, I may be looking at another screen, but we're happy to have everyone here with us today, and I hope that you get some value from it. So let's start off with this idea of our reality check. Copilot is great at a first draft fast. And I come from an academic environment. And in our academic environment, the thing that our students always hated was starting with a blank page. Give them an outline, give them a template, and again, I'm old, so I recall what it was like to start with a blank page. In fact, I'm old that we used to handwrite some of these things. We're in a different time. So starting with a blank page is challenging for some. This gets them to the first draft fast. Does it well? Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Many will say this is a Copilot, not an autopilot. Human intervention is still necessary, and it's accelerating the way that we're moving, the way that we're communicating. So have some forgiveness in the process as well. Summarization. Thanks. Yeah, the whole old thing is caught up to me after turning 50, so we're gonna let that go. Thanks, Sherry. In summarization, absolutely great. Again, but it's only as good as what your prompt is. So if you're not getting the output that you want, we want to help you get there faster. Brainstorming and organizing ideas. I'm finding that the best way for me to do that is to use the audio, to actually use the audio chat with Copilot, but we'll talk about other ideas on that. Catching you up on what you missed, and repetitive formatting and data cleanup. Now, again, we'll come to some of these examples, but I would love to hear examples as we get to these certain sections on what are you doing and what is working. We could spend a lot of time talking about what's not working because there's always frustrations. But for the group, if we can do a little bit of sharing of what is working, it will help. So what it isn't, at least yet, it's certainly not a replacement for critical thinking. But what I like about it is it can prompt us. It can ask us questions. It can prompt us to think about things in different ways, to add more inputs to get better results. So no, it's not replacing critical thinking, but is it helping us go deeper than we might have? Perhaps. It's not perfectly accurate every time. I'm just grateful that some of the images have finally gotten better. I was exhausted by seeing how many times people would have like more than 2 arms and more than 5 fingers on a hand. So the accuracy of images certainly improving, accuracy of results. Well, you know, garbage in, garbage out. It's not a mind reader. It needs good input. Okay, please, I've got to see if there's a reaction on this, okay? Is there anyone who feels like at some points Copilot or any AI should be better by now? Like, why isn't it reading my mind? And like, I've been using it long enough. Why isn't it following these cues? Is there anybody else on that page with me right now? Not too. Oh, we got a couple reactions. All right, great. It's not equally useful in every role or every task, and it is not set it and forget it, period. There are definitely some things you can do that are set it and forget it, but it's not just, again, not autopilot. So where do we go next? Here are some scenarios where Copilot is going to earn the keep. So one of the things I want to make sure of is that Copilot truly is everywhere. And it travels well. So if I'm in PowerPoint and I'm prompting it to do something, and then I jump back out into my Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot app, and I'm looking at what I've done, like that history stays connected. And to me, I love that it's traveling between all of our apps. So we're going to play around in Outlook, Teams, Word, Excel, and Copilot Chat. Ooh, sorry on that one slide, that font, I made some changes to increase readability and I missed one, so sorry about that. So let's start looking at some demonstrations and where we can go next with this. Okay. Now, email drafting. So give me a thumbs up if we're using, if anybody's using it for drafting your email. Anybody using it for drafting your email? And I'd love to hear what's working and what's not. So if you need to reply to a client who's asking about project timeline changes and the email thread is 12 messages long, we want to be professional, clear, and reference specific details in the thread. I've included a sample prompt for you. Draft a reply that acknowledges the timeline concern, confirms a new delivery date, offers to schedule a check-in call. Keep it professional, warm, and under 150 words. That's a nice prompt, okay? Now, also, thanks for those of you who are participating in chat. Tell me what else you're using. While I'm talking about the next part, tell me what else you're using Copilot for in email. Tell me what else you're using Copilot for in email. So in this example, Copilot will go through your thread and get the context. So you do not have to summarize it. It's going to specify the tone, and that by specifying the tone, it's going to really help you get to the result faster. Thank goodness. Okay. Now, the word count constraint means that things are going to stay tight, right? It's going to really help us stay focused on what we've got going on. And you shouldn't just press send, right? We have specific details and you shouldn't just press send. So this is where things get really helpful for us, is that we have, we have this stuff going on, and it's, I don't know, how would you say it? It's getting me to my end result a lot faster. So let's just use an example. Everybody ready? I'm going to go through a quick example. So as an example, I'll share my screen in just a moment. We're going to be talking about upcoming project. And as we do that, here's my new screen here. There we go. Okay, so first of all, we do have an option over here to do a summarize, right? And fine. Now, by the way, I am still using Outlook Classic look just a little bit different when you're in New Outlook. But if I jump over to my Summarize button, that's fine. Like it's just fine, right? Like it's an okay place to be. It certainly means I don't have to go through all of the messages to get there, but is it truly going to, is it something that I'm going to send off? Maybe not. I'm just using it as a checklist for myself. So the next thing to think about is this idea of draft with Copilot. So I'm going to jump in and do a quick reply. And we have the keyboard shortcut, which is Alt-I to draft with Copilot. And now, what do we want it to say? So you can start using some of the pre-created prompts if we want to, but we can say that we're looking for a follow-up email, next steps in the project, two to three options, timeline, and goals. Just as a starting point. Now, I also will tell you, I am not about prompt engineering down to the final, like the highest detail. I'll give you a framework around it later if that's something that you want. But the way that while it's generating, I'll just talk for a quick second. The way that I like to think about this is you can either be treating your Copilot as an assistant or an intern, okay? So in this phase, as an assistant or an intern, an assistant is going to have a lot more context. They're going to know how you operate. They're going to know people that you meet with. They'll have context about them. They will have an idea of how you like to get information and how you like to give information. So an assistant is just a more advanced connection. An intern is going to be someone who you have to provide a lot more coaching to. Bring them up to speed on the client or the opportunity. Bring them up to speed on how you like to get information and how you like to give information. Where can they go to find additional inside? And eventually, if you're coaching by prompting as if someone's an intern, that can help them get to the assistant, right? They're going to learn as they go. Copilot will learn as it goes to become more of that assistant mode. But either way, whether you're starting out using Copilot and you're treating it either as an intern or an assistant, you're going to need to provide more information. The difference is, do you provide it up front like you might with an intern, or do you provide it along the path of iteration like you might an assistant? So that's where we're kind of going with this adventure. Now, the only thing that I did not do in this is I have a good result, right? We have three options. Here are our plans, et cetera, et cetera. This is a good place to go. But you know what? It is long. So I'm going to just say, can you do this more succinctly? And I certainly could change any of the data points as well, but just to get us through to the next part, doing it more succinctly. I also always make sure that I don't have anybody else's name in that to box except my own, because I don't want to accidentally have something sent. And here we go. Now this is much more succinct. There's only, there's still three options, but there's very clear goal, approach, timeline, etc. And I'm going to just save that draft and we'll come back to that at another point. So just another way to approach, how you can get to those emails. Let's resume where we left off here. And there we go. All right. So again, just a good starting point as we're doing this. Now, if you have a favorite way that you prompt, go ahead and put that in chat and share that with us. Go ahead and put that in chat. Next up, friends, if this is the only use case that you're using for using Copilot for, I would say that this is 100% worthwhile. So we're going to be talking next about meeting recap. Can you please give me some sort of reaction if you are regularly using meeting recap in Teams? I'm super nervous if we're not. Hey, Barry, are you using meeting recap in Teams? Come on and let's chat for a second.
I have in the past. I've also used it to take notes, summarize calls, act as an assistant for me while I'm meeting with people. So yeah, I've used it for these types of scenarios.
So this is why I try to insist on almost being the host of almost every meeting that I'm participating in, because I'm going to turn my transcription on. It does not need to be recorded. The difference is, are you just getting the words or are you getting everything else along with it, which is completely fine. But friends, when I talk about this idea of accelerated impact, what I have learned this year, and Barry, I'll be super curious, if you had any results along this as well. We have been able to serve our customers at a higher level because after every meeting, I have that transcript and we're able to identify anything that got covered, right? So I can get a summary. I can identify things that we may have missed because it'll be keeping track of stuff. And I get it to draft that follow-up email before the end of the day, like hopefully before I move on to my next meeting, but I'm not always that lucky. And by doing that on a routine basis, especially things that if I'm putting together a whole training plan or things like that, that I used to have to overthink, all of my work has been loaded into Copilot already through SharePoint and Teams. So I'm producing results so much faster that we've shortened our sales cycle by about 75%. Like we're closing things so much faster because I'm not delaying in my follow-up. Any similar examples on that, Barry?
Yeah, I mean, I've used it multiple times where exactly as you said, it was helpful for me just to go back and pick out specific items that either the person I was meeting with wanted to make sure we focused on or address, and also sharing those important details from that conversation with other people when I need to get them involved, or just to provide updates about what was discussed, covered, focused on during the meeting. So yeah.
I love it. Thank you. And Andrew shares in chat, I record every training and use a nice prompt to pull out the good, the bad, and the ugly. Absolutely. I mean, things just don't always go right. And I've used it with trainings to also pull out, like if I have administrative things that I want to follow up with either my point of contact or their IT department. For example, I was doing a training yesterday and we found out that half of their organization has their default sharing settings set to anyone. And anyone can edit is their default sharing settings. And I'm like, you know what? There's no other controls around that. I'm going to just make sure that IT is aware of that. Those are the things that you can do when you don't have to remember to stop and take a note of that while you're in the middle of a training session. So I think we're making a good use case. That's actually a great question, Andrew. A good question to ask us is how many times a week do we prompt Copilot? If it's less than 30, then it's not really being used. And in the end, I would say that if you think you are a heavy-ish user of Copilot, cool, because that might vary for everyone. So I'm not going to go with that hard number of 30, but certainly, multiple times a day, or what are you using it for that's really you're able to leverage? So Barry, thank you for coming back on camera. I don't want to distract you too much on that. So let's talk through if you are in meetings. So one thing I do is when I'm hosting the meeting, it's always transcribed. The next thing is when I am a participant in someone else's meeting, especially because I will always be external, I follow up immediately after that meeting. I ask them to transcribe it if they're not already, and I follow up and ask them for the transcript in a downloaded format. Okay. And that's because from a sharing perspective, if they just share it with me, it's not likely to work, but I want the transcripts to get added into my notes. So prompt suggestions, summarize the meeting, organize it by topic, list the action items. Now, if you're already using transcription in your Teams meetings and you've turned on the loop feature of notes in your meetings, Some of this stuff is already happening just by the very nature of turning on transcription and pulling up Loop. If you have Copilot in your, the licensed version of Copilot, M365 Copilot, not just Copilot Chat. Couple other things that I consider asking: what questions were raised but not resolved? Also, if there is something funky with like an undertone in a meeting, this goes back to a little bit of the different hats to wear. If there's something that feels just a little bit off, just a little bit funky, I might say to Copilot, especially when I have a full recording on and it can catch tone and things like that, not just words, I would say, did Andrew feel a little reserved, or did Andrew seem a little reserved in some of his responses? Was there something I said or something that may have happened that I did not acknowledge that could have created that? Like, I actually ask it when there are some odd dynamics for Copilot to help me dig back into that. And if we have the recording, not just the transcript, I can go back and look at that part of the meeting again and just see what might have been going on for that. So it's not just about like the output of the data. It's like, talk to me about the interaction and what can I do to run these meetings better or things like that. Barry, did you have something you wanted to add there?
Oh, no, I had a question. I was curious if you put in specifics, prompts, or guidelines for Copilot about what for you would signal anything worth paying extra attention to in this scenario where, you know, you're asking, you wanted to help you screen or provide feedback about how things went during the meeting call.
So I do when that's more like a tangible output. Like if I say, hey, there seemed to be some price sensitivity or some reservation on, you know, when we talked about this, there seemed to be some reservation, you know, and ask it to just say like, was there other things going on that, especially when there's a bunch of people in the meeting, you know, I will ask it when it comes to that, the idea of like that feeling, the reservation. Again, it's totally different experience when you've transcribed versus recording because there's just different data to go off of on that. But I don't have any prompts or keywords I use for that. I just kind of say like, I had a sense that, and just ask for it to weigh in on it in a really informal manner, because what it's going to do for me is cue me into where to go look to, you know, and to it, where I should go investigate further.
Okay.
Got it. Very good. And Andrew's putting some good stuff in chat as well. Thank you. So again, in order for this to work, your transcription has to be on. You can ask for the structure by topic or by person. You can use decisions and action items. Again, some of those things are going to come naturally in the notes, the Loop Notes version of it, those components. Follow-up prompts are very powerful. And again, ask it, like, was there something that seemed contentious? Things like that. Like, there's no reason not to like let it catch some of these things. Copilot catches things that you might have missed. And sometimes I'll just ask, was there anything I missed? Was there anything that I didn't dial in on? So best for the meetings that you are leading, meetings you've missed, or meetings with a lot of threads. Now, let me give you a quick overview. I'll actually share my screen on this one. Okay, friends. So whether it's a meeting, whether it's a training, whatever that is, when you have turned on the transcript or recording, you're going to have the option then to go back in and view the recap. So a couple different things to keep in mind when you're doing that is bringing it up on another screen. So give me just a second, I'll bring it over. First of all, some of the things I like is that it really will show, like this was a training session, but I like it to talk about, you know, did everybody get a turn to talk? When I'm doing a meeting, you know, especially if I'm doing like a new client meeting, I want to be the one who talks almost the least, not the one who talks the most. So you get a sense for yourself about how that works. And in some situations, and it does not do this for me perfectly, it may break things down into topics and chapters. I I don't often have, I've had it work a couple of times, but more often than not, that does not work well for what I do. Then we have a few things in our shared. So we have the transcript. So that's the word for word. Any mentions, a custom summary, which you could ask for it to pull out key points, the overall AI summary, and then some notes. And you can scroll through to see follow-up tasks and things like that. And in fact, this is the one where it's about the sharing anyone versus just sharing internal. And you can give it a little bit of feedback. Finally, the thing to keep in mind with this is that if you were to just share this as it does not share well. Okay, so I actually would, if it's for me, I would not only go into the transcript, but I would, if somebody's asking for this because they want to have it for their point of reference, I would go into the transcript, download it, and send the file, not necessarily a link. And this guy's brand new. They've always had the option to do an audio recap, which for those of you who might be on the run or on a mobile device, that might be very helpful. But there's actually now, this is brand new to me, a video recap. So perhaps that might be something that's helpful as well. Just a couple different ways to get more out of your meeting events. And again, so wait, hold on. Let me go back here for just a second. Sorry, I'll show you how I would take this to the next level. So now we've had the meeting, whatever meeting that is. We have all our notes, we have recordings, whatever I need to share. The next step I take is I jump into Copilot right here in Teams. And I start to say, based on, these interactions, based on what happened in this meeting, based on what I have in my email about what we're trying to deliver, based on, the training plan that we were working on, whatever that was, please help me draft the follow-up email to the client, maybe with particular key points, highlighting some of the things from the training, talking about our next steps, getting into future opportunities for training, whatever that is. But I go right in here with this recap handy on my screen. And I ask it to draft that email so that it has all that new context ready to go. And I'm just framing up where I want that message to go next. And we're drafting that email. And that's what I'm talking about by collapsing that accordion timeline just a little bit, because as soon as a meeting is over, jump in, do the prompt, move this to the next step, get that email out while it's still fresh for everybody. And again, that's where I'm talking about really kind of collapsing that sales cycle as well. Before I move on, I'm going to just pause. We're at the halfway point, and I'd like to just pause and see if there's any questions that we have come up so far. Andrew did post something in about the Microsoft Work Trend Indexed Annual Report. Microsoft classifies AI users as survey respondents who reported using generative AI for work at least occasionally, from less than once a month to more than once per day. So less than once a month is definitely not using AI. So 30 times a week might be a little bit more than what some people need to do, but it all depends. There's not a rule right now that I'm following in terms of what that classification is. Barry, did you have something you wanted to add there?
No, I was just getting ready in case there are any questions, and I would present.
No problem. Just double checking. Yep, all good.
No.
Copilot learns what we do and is a personal AI assistant. The more we use it, the better we get. For sure. And again, that's why in some cases, I actually, especially for brainstorming, I like talking to my AI. So when I'm doing that, and just in case you have not used this feature yet, by talking, I mean starting my dictation right there and jumping in, and just sometimes it's stream of consciousness. So hold on, I feel like I'm jumping ahead of myself in my presentation. I get so excited about this stuff. Let's come back and resume. And so first draft creation, hold on just a second. There we go. Let's just jump into the research and brainstorming, and then because we were just talking about that just a little bit, and then I'll back up into the other stuff. So in this case, again, the idea, we're preparing a proposal for a new initiative. We need to think through risks, compare options, and draft talking points. We don't want to start from scratch or call a meeting just to brainstorm. This is truly where Copilot can be a thinking partner and structure messy ideas. And that's partly why I love, as you can tell, I'm a talker. And I love turning on the dictation as a way to just do that brain dump. And again, you can do that on a mobile device as well. So if you're in the car and you're like, I just need to get this out of my brain and let it get organized, turn on M365 Copilot on your mobile application, mobile device, turn on your dictation and just say a couple of things, like frame it up. I'm going to do some brainstorming. I'm going to talk for a little bit. Upon a pause, why don't you ask me a question, right? To have it coach and fill in some of the dots. But you can have it, give you some questions to answer, to dig into your ideas first. Sherry, I did that on my morning walk as ideas pop into my head. Absolutely. I think it's just our brains are moving a lot really fast right now. And so to find ways to get it out of our brain and into something else. Oh, cool. There's actually, Andrew said the Hey Copilot is a feature available for the Windows desktop app, and it's not available on a cell yet. I'm a little bit nervous because I have a lot of Google devices around my house, and the last thing I want to do is say, hey, anything, and awake all of those at one time. But could be great. It really could be great. Also, as you're trying to use this for research or brainstorming, like tell it, like, I'm curious what others are doing. I'm curious, like, here's my competition in this space. I'm curious what they might be putting out on that. Whatever you're curious about, but start, you start one chat on this topic and now it sticks and it's going to be another point of reference and it's going to be something you can come back to. So then once you've dumped it all, you can ask it for other prompts like pros and cons, key talking points, or even how to organize all of what I just said so that I can start asking better questions or move this into my next desired output. Okay, so that's where we're going with the research and brainstorming. And what I love about that is I can talk to it. You don't have to. I know I like to type a lot. I'm more of a typer than a talker, but in this case, it's the talking that helps move it from my head faster. Otherwise, I'm overthinking as I'm typing it. Did I say it right? Did I spell it right? Just brain dump, just like you would in free brainstorming. All right, we're going to jump back. First draft creation, especially like Word or in Outlook. Again, it's that idea of moving from zero to output. Now, I don't know, maybe we're not starting at zero. Maybe we have some other things that we've done before, but we haven't refined it to an updated version, or we have new context to give it. So I did have Copilot go through like my standard proposal template. Again, another reason why I'm closing deals faster is because we've made better proposals, right? Like I had my standard proposal template that was fine. It did the job, but now we've tightened so much up because I'm using Copilot for it. So here, as an example, we need to write a project status update for leadership. It should cover progress, risks, and next steps. We have a lot of notes, but we've been staring at the blank page. So one example is draft a one-page project status update for leadership. Include progress this month, current risks, and next steps. Use a professional, concise tone and reference the attached project notes for context. There we go. Again, it's just a jump start. So I've been working on this Copilot adoption project right now. And this organization literally bought 1,600 licenses for their employee group and gave them all Microsoft 365 Copilot as of the beginning of the year. Here you go. Cool. Good luck. Go use it. Well, we all know that that's not going to go very well. So in April, we began a 9-month project to help move the adoption needle. Yeah, interesting is right. That was not my recommendation. That's just what they did. And now I'm helping on the end result. So what we're doing though, friends, is like this project has been very fluid. We know where we want to get them to, but it's been very fluid. And, trying to get all the buy-in at the top levels and things like that. We have recorded every single meeting that we've had. We've transcribed every single meeting that we've had, because for the first 45 days before we actually did the launch of the project in April, this baby changed more times than I could count. Change request, change request, change request. So we're about ready to do our first report to leadership about how it's been going. And from a context standpoint, my first step is to go in and kind of do a where we started. Thank you, Andrew. Yes, we definitely have a good retainer going on right now. So what I want to do is show, typically it's like starting point, progress, end point, or next check-in point. And I want to show how that starting point was so all over the place for so many different reasons, and it evolved so many different times. I'm going to use like a series of dots over at the starting point. Now we've gotten that all siphoned into, one forward direction, but that was really challenging. And so it's important to kind of recognize that by keeping those notes of those stories and then feeding those stories into the tool, I will be able to provide, using like that first draft creation, I'll be able to provide a bit of context around why people might have felt like things were just a little bit scattered in the beginning of the project, because they were, for a whole lot of outside reasons. So without that information, all we can really go back to is saying, like, unless we're keeping change orders for every single thing that changed, which could happen, in this approach, we can go back and tell the story a lot better. And I think that then helps accentuate the results that we got. There's a question, VJ is asking a question in chat about Copilot limitations like Apple Intelligence. I don't have enough information to answer that question, and I'm certainly happy to have anyone else jump in who has some additional feedback that they'd like to share on that. So I'm going to move on to my last point, my last use case, and then we have a little bit more that we can do together. So in the last use case that I have here, it is about data sense making with Copilot. Now, friends, I will tell you, I did a training about Excel and Copilot. It may have even been 9+ months ago. It's been a minute. But what I will tell you is that the results were pretty consistently disappointing. And I love Excel and I love Copilot. And those two things, in the moment that I was doing it, in the way that I was doing it, was consistently disappointing. So I'm like, okay, well, this isn't great. But, we're going to live with these results, and that's fine. So what do we do? Well, here's an example. We have a sales report with 2,000 rows. We want to know what are the trends, what regions are underperforming. We don't want to build the pivot tables from scratch, so we can get some summary data. Now, here's the thing. I'll share with you an example of something similar that I've done recently. And this is 10,000 rows. No, this is a lot more. This is 72,000 rows of data. And it's just sample data that we have related to some shopping centers in Australia, sample data. And I was teaching a class that I just wanted them to try Copilot. So all I did was say, hey, Copilot, show me what's interesting. Now, I'm not going to do that live in here because it takes it a minute. And I hope it does. It's 72,000 lines of data. So sometimes I do feel it moves a little slower than I might like. But here's what it did. It gave me a quick overview of the data set, and then it started to talk about insights. Here are our chains. Okay, we clearly have a chain that is outperforming the other chain. Here are our regions. Well, again, this has to do a bit with population in Australia as well. Here are where the sales are higher. Here are our top product categories, and it gives a quick summary of each. Now, what I don't love is that even though I built this thing in Excel and this here looks like a chart. It's not a chart. It's literally an image. So like that did not land well for me as an Excel trainer. I mean, I guess that still does keep me having a job, which is great. But, you know, that's only an okay win for me. I would want that to be something that I could manipulate, but it is an output. And then finally down at the bottom, there's actually some questions for deeper analysis. For me, this is a good kickstart into the data, because nobody wants to go look at, 72,000 lines of data. And you certainly can start with your pivot tables to get answers to your questions, but you have to know what questions to ask first. So here's, I found, and again, Copilot did, by the way, it moved. It used to be up here, in the upper right corner. Now it's this little floaty guy down here, almost like Clippy. Andrew is asking another great question. It absolutely can create proper charts, but it didn't by default. And that's what was annoying to me. Is can it? Yes. Did it? Not on the first question. And sometimes this is because what happens in my experience is that if it doesn't win on the first question, people quit. And I don't want you to quit. I want you to then prompt it to say, hey, can you turn that into a proper chart? Cool. Go ahead and try that. And Andrew, I've tried Opus. So Opus is the Claude or Anthropic tool that is in Copilot, and it is the base of some of these programs as well. I tried that when I was creating my PowerPoint, and it did 1,000,000 times better at PowerPoint. Someone else said that they tried Copilot for PowerPoint and they were just disappointed. You are absolutely right. And in fact, yeah, Andrew, you did say that. Copilot in PowerPoint edit mode sucks. It takes too long. It sucks. However, when I used it with Opus, it did a lot better. So it depends on like where do you go to do the build and what kind of extra coaching do you need to do it. But for those of you who are playing with some of this stuff for the first time, it's not taking our jobs, but this moves me from not knowing anything about the data to getting some insights that I can dig into a little bit faster. Just another way, again, to start thinking about what are our use cases. Now, we'll jump back over here. And resume. All right, so we've done a few things here. Let's just talk through our pitfalls. So a couple of the pitfalls include vague prompts. Now, I don't hate vague prompts, but Copilot does. And Copilot is learning from you as you go. So the better your prompts are, the better your results are going to be. So try to give better prompts. And not just, what you want it to do, but the results or outputs that you want to get from it as well. Give it some context, right? Give it context. And if it's not connected to your, if you're using just Copilot Chat, if it's not connected to your SharePoint or Teams, upload the relevant files. Take the minute and do it. It will get you better results. Don't expect perfection on the first try. And if it sucks right now, it might not suck in a week. Okay, we are finding this all the time right now, is when I did this a week ago, it would give me this result. Well, whether the product improved or whether I improved or whether it learned because of me, any of those, your outputs will get better. And so the same thing that you've done and not had great results with in the past may be worth trying again. And finally, it is imperative that you review your stuff before you send it. Just because Copilot wrote it doesn't mean it's perfect. You have to check your sources. You have to check for hallucinations, and it's going to have your name on it. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now, I do have just a little bit of prompt stuff here for us. And because everybody's providing a framework, I'm going to just provide a framework for you. In case you needed it, take a picture of this one. I thought it was kind of pretty. So a prompt pattern or framework that can work, and again, find the one that works best for you and keep using it consistently, is goal, what are you trying to get out of it? Audience, who's it for? Format, how does it look? Tone, how does it sound? And context, what information, what are the inputs I should use? And once you've created those things as standards, it won't be such a big deal in the future. It won't be such a problem in the future. It just won't. So just get used to doing some of that as we go. So who benefits the most from from using AI? Well, really, it's our heavy email communicators, people who are in meeting heavy roles, content creators and writers, managers who need recaps, honestly. And I actually think anybody in sales right now, anybody in sales will benefit very much from using Copilot. The ones that I'm seeing most resistant in, I do a lot of work with insurance. I do a lot of work with healthcare. I do a lot of work with financial institutions and banks. They're just going a lot slower, as well they should, right? They're still trying to figure it out. But the reality is that even in those organizations, there is AI adoption happening. They're just trying to navigate it so that they're not running into any compliance issues. Additionally, organizations that are using tools that are primarily living outside of Microsoft products, we're talking about what are the best ways to do some integrations. And the connectors that do exist are great, but we also want to make sure we're not over connecting some things. There's still a lot of sensitivity around PII and what's being shared. So there's just a lot of stuff kind of moving in sales with an asterisk. Fair. So it's up to you as you're making these adoption, recommendations and how you're suggesting organizations use it. I will tell you the use cases that we've shared today. This is not rocket surgery, friends. I totally understand that you might not have gotten a lot of like, wow, this is new. But I think it's helpful to have a sense of where our individuals and where our organizations in their adoption process. And what you're seeing right now is very similar to the basics of what I'm doing as people are starting to understand how to adopt AI. They need tangible first step use cases before they can start to reimagine processes. So if the organizations are ready to go deeper, well, one, when people start experimenting on their own, that's the time to turn them into champions. Like, let them loose within guardrails, but like turn them into champions and advocates so that they're encouraging others to do it. When leaders are asking, the first thing I hear is that they don't even know what's possible. So they don't want to necessarily do all sorts of random things in the organization or authorize that until they know what's possible. So we do immersion types of sessions so the leaders have a better idea. If you're already licensing, I'm going to just say, please make sure you have AI policies in place and that you've put in proper guardrails around everything shared on SharePoint and Teams. And, again, this is not meant to be a one and done. This adoption project that we're doing with this organization of 1,600 users is 9 months long. Like, you can't just say like, okay, here it is, go use it, good luck. We need emphasis, we need reinforcement, we need to let people come along on this ride with a little bit of time and a little bit of grace. So it is consistent progress, not just like big wins and then move on. Okay, so deeper enablement is role specific, hands-on. The Champions program, like I mentioned, creating prompt libraries and digging into workflows. There's usually one person on a team that's like, but I want to do this. Let's figure it out. That's the excitement. That's where things get really fun. And then it becomes ongoing habit building. So as you walk away from our time together today, and we will have time for questions as well, I just want you to think, Copilot's a drafting partner. You have better inputs lead to better outputs. Start where someone's going to get the most bang for their buck, where the value is clearest. Review before you send. And adoption is a habit, not an event. That said, I very much appreciate Barry inviting me onto our session today. I'm going to leave the questions up, and please please go ahead and put anything in chat. We can have some conversations there. And I really appreciate it, everyone. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'd love to find you there.